There are a few phrases that have entered the national conversation over and over again.
Yeah, we hear them in conversations with our own family and friends, in the news, and across social media.
So Homa Bash breaks them down: white privilege, systemic racism, and implicit bias.
To start, let's head to the woman who coined the term white privilege back in 1988. Dr. Peggy McIntosh, founder of National Seed Project, which teaches inclusive lessons for schools and universities.
It is advantage that I've had ever since I was born for being white in a culture that favors whites.
She says privilege is an invisible system.
Those who benefit from it in any form of privilege are likely not to fully understand that.
And she wrote a list about 50 ways she benefited herself.
If a cop pulls me over for speeding, I can be sure it wasn't because of the color of my skin. Shop alone in stores without worrying that I'm being followed or harassed because I'm suspected of being a shoplifter. I could be sure that our children would be given curricular materials that would reflect their race back to them.
Next up, systemic racism. This is Aisha Bell Hardaway, a law professor and the co-director of the Social Justice Institute at Case Western Reserve University.
Systemic racism really is the deliberate construction of American society that was formed at its origins. In the beginning, right, there was a desire in this country for domination control.
The easiest way to do that, Hardaway says, was creating a racial hierarchy. First by displacing indigenous Americans, and then by enslaving black people.
The systemic racism is really about the outreach of that origins into all areas of American society.
Things like redlining, which is discriminating when it comes to mortgages and loans, wage gaps, mass incarcerations, funding of school districts.
It is a part of every fabric of our country.
Now that leads us to implicit bias. A lot of times it's something that's done unconsciously, a bias or way of thinking we don't even realize that we have. For Hardaway though, it isn't actually a term she likes to use.
Implicit bias, I think, is an easy way to talk about racism in a way to help people feel less responsible for either the benefit that they receive as a result of systemic racism, right? Or their actions that contribute to systemic racism.
Hardaway says simply calling it implicit bias means people don't have to take ownership of their prejudices. And that can get in the way of real action and change. And these are just a few of the phrases we've been hearing when it comes to racial equity and equality, but experts say having a better grasp of what they mean for all of us can help us move forward. The goal is that through education and knowledge, we can lead to policy and procedural changes that are more equitable for everyone. Homa Bash, News 5.